going to talk about fraction multiplication in both solving word problems and writing word problems. Our first instructions are to solve with a visual model and then write the mathematical equation. Flowers cover 3/4 of my garden. Half of the flowers in my garden are tulips. What fraction of my garden is tulips? Well, I'm going to start by looking at the question, and it's asking for fraction. Fraction of what? Fraction of my garden. So I'm going to draw a garden. This is an area model, and I'm going to use a rectangle as opposed to a circle. I find rectangles easier to work with. So then I have to decide, am I going to do 3/4 or 1/2? Well, this rectangle represents my garden. So which fraction is talking about the garden? 3/4 of a garden as opposed to 1/2 of the flowers. I don't know where the flowers are yet, so I can't deal with half of the flowers. So I start with half of my garden, 3/4 of my garden. So here we go. We'll cut it into fourths and shade 3 of the 4 parts, and this will be 3/4 of my garden. And the 3/4 of my garden represented where I have flowers. So now I have a picture of where I have flowers, and I can use the 1/2. Half of the flowers would be right here. So this is half of the flowers. Or, stepping back a moment, half of 3/4 of my garden. I can clean this up for a final answer where I have my 3/4, my half, and I have tulips, and I can see that 3/8 of my garden is tulips. The second part of this question is about what the mathematical equation. So the big confusion here is, should I write 3/4 times a half, the order where they show up in my story, or should I write 1/2 times 3/4? They both give us 3/8, but only one of them correctly models this situation. So we want to pick the one that models the situation. To do that, we're going to use this description of what we did, half of 3/4 of my garden. I'm going to take that, and it translates directly. Half of is multiplication, 3/4, and there we have our expression. To make it an equation, we add an equal sign, and we have 3/8. That correctly models our situation. Next, we're going to write a story problem given fraction multiplication. So I'll start with 3/4 of 4/5 of, and I need to pick a unit. So last time I had an area unit, and this time I'm going to go with linear. I'm going to go with miles. As soon as I pick my unit, I know that my answer will have the same unit. So these will be referencing the same original whole, and I'll just need to know how many miles. So now that I have the original whole, the next thing would be to talk about 4/5 of the whole, 4/5 of a mile. So this will be our intermediate. So we need to think about what could be 4/5 of a mile. So here we're going to have, let's have this be the distance to school, 4/5 maybe of a mile right here, 4/5 of a mile. Now we can talk about 3/4 of the distance to school. So let's see if we can write the problem here. The school is 4/5 of a mile from John's house. If he walks 3/4 of the distance to school, how many miles does he walk? All right, now we're ready to solve it. So let's see, if we were going to visually solve this, we'd look at what units are we talking about. We're talking about miles. So I want to draw miles to start with, and I'm going to draw 1 mile Now I have my units, and then I'm going to come in and draw my 4/5 of a mile. So let's see if I can do roughly 4/5 here. So this is 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5 of a mile. So that is the distance to school. So when I talk 3/4 of the distance to school, I'm taking this yellow line and breaking it into 4 equal parts and selecting 3 of them. That's 3/4 of the distance. I can translate it up here to get the answer to my problem. And what we have here is we had 1 mile, 4/5 of a mile, and this represents 3/4 of 4/5. So it's 3/4 of 4/5 of a mile. And where did we land here? We landed at 3/5. So 3/4 of 4/5 equals 3/5, and that'll be the answer to our problem, 3/5 of a mile. One last problem with another area model. Karen has a rectangular garden that is 2/3 of a meter wide and 4/5 of a meter long. What is the area of the garden? In this case, we're not talking about necessarily 2/3 of 4/5 of a distance. We could draw this one with a square in this case because both dimensions are going to be 1 meter. That's what our units are. So we would want to have them matching since they're the same. So our units are meters. And then I can just go ahead and fill in the 2/3 and the 4/5. So here's 2/3 of a meter. Here's 4/5 of a meter. I can turn my linear length and width dimensions, extend them across my square meter, and then shade in 2/3 of a meter all the way down, and shade in 4/5 of a meter all the way across. And I'm looking for the overlapping region right here for my answer. So to clean this up, whoops. Oh no, I lost it. Well, we'll just fill it in here. To clean this up, we'll have our 2/3, our 4/5, and we had this region was shaded, which is going to be 8/15 square meters.